And we are live. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Billy Wroe. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. Today is Tuesday, and since it is Tuesday, you should already know what that means. It's time for our first row Intersation. Tonight's guest, is me. I'm just actually opening us up. I actually have a special guest host tonight. For those who've been keeping track of what's going on the first row, you would know her face. Her name is Miss Taralyn Singletary. If you could say hello, Taralyn, please.
Hello, everybody out there. It's gonna be fun tonight. Billy Wroe in the hot seat.
you got me a little nervous. Like, oh shoot, I'm not used to being the guest. I'm used to asking the questions, not being asked questions. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. But tonight's topic will actually be Intersations. However, it's also a prelude to another show segment that's going to be coming on that will be hosted by Taralyn Singletary called Behind the Grind. So tonight's Intersation is Behind the Grind of First Row with yours truly, Billy Wroe. So for those who are still relatively new to the Intersation topic, I'm going to give this probably like for the first 6 months, I'm going to keep telling people what Intersations are. After 6 months, you just got to go and watch a replay. So for those who are new to the term Intersation, what Intersation is when you take interview and conversation, when you mold them together, you get Intersation. So in my life, I'm very privileged to have a very diverse network of friends, acquaintances, coworkers, family members. At some points in life, it feels like strangers that just like to talk to me. But I'm very fortunate to have this because in these interactions that I have with this network of people, I actually have these very uplifting, growth-inspiring conversations. And those conversations go beyond the surface level into more deep and meaningful things that actually promote growth. And so one of my friends by the name of JC, I call her name is Jennifer Chambers, actually said, wouldn't it be interesting if we recorded these conversations or people could hear or listen to our conversations? Imagine the growth that they would be able to experience the same way you and I experience growth. And thus the concept was birthed in my mind about Intersations. A couple months later, boom, Intersations, Bob's your uncle. So that's what Intersations is. And though tonight you will see interaction between Taralyn and I, Taralyn asking me questions, me responding to those questions and back and forth, realize that this format is very, very interactive. We want you to interact. We want you to ask questions. We want you to engage and contribute with nuggets and notes and things that you want to add to the conversation. And as those come in, we will try our best to bring those into the conversation. So for those who are already in here, Brother Bruce Gatewood, we appreciate you being here early and or on time. I hope you're ready for a great night. Feel free to ask any questions. This is probably going to be the most first row informative Intersation that you will get for the remainder of this year. So I'm going to say take advantage. With that, I am actually going to turn over the show. My baby, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Taralyn Singletary. If you could please take it away.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you. Thank you for the intro. And for everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in to this special edition of Intersations. And as Billy was saying, this is also the intro to Behind the Grind. So I guess I'll give you guys just a little bit of a sneak peek about what Behind the Grind is about before we jump right into grilling Billy Wroe tonight. So Behind the Grind is a series that I'm going to be hosting here on the first row. And it's all about taking real life people and putting them at the forefront to share some of the behind the scenes with their successes. So very often these days, all we see is everything that's going great in someone's life, in their business, in their career. All we see are snapshots of what appears to be perfection. But the truth of the matter is nothing in life is perfect. And anything that you do see that looks like it's appetizing or something that you want to have, there's a story behind it. And Behind the Grind is all about sharing that real life story and putting into perspective what it means to get to a space of success, and also to hear the definition of success by those who actually have achieved it in their own right. No holds barred, not about anything else that you've seen or that you've heard someone tells you success should be. So tonight, you guys who have been following us, you've been checking out the programming on the first row, and you know that Billy has modeled this so far, this network, to be all about solutions. So we know a little bit about what the network stands for and some of the content here, but I thought tonight would be the perfect opportunity to pop the cherry on Behind the Grind and get to bust open the head of Billy Wroe and learn a little bit about him. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. So Billy, I love how you describe what the first row has meant to you and how that puts basically no space in between information and you and the people who make the moves here and there, the movers and the shakers. So you've decided to create the first row for yourself. So I guess my first question would be, you know, now that you've created this space, what do you do or how do you intend to maximize having that space on the first row?
Oh, here we go. All right. So the space, though, I created the space of first row initially for myself and almost subconsciously for others. The space really is to create a space for stories. One of the things that I learned very early in the business world is that you can tell people all the facts you want, you can give them all the formulas you want. However, if you can't connect that to a human story, an actual event or an experience that somebody can resonate with or feel or substitute themselves into, then that information typically gets lost somewhere in the shuffle. So for me, the first row was a space created for that storytelling component, for people to be able to share their phenomenal stories. And I love what you're talking about doing with Behind the Grind, because I feel like that's going to take another layer from behind the story, where you're right. People think that things are going perfect in the lives of others. People think that there's no stress or any challenges or obstacles that people have to overcome because they only see one portion of a person's life. But when you start peeling back those layers, you start finding how close we actually are to each other, the same relationship type issues that we all experience, the desire to be loved, the desire for affection, the stress that may, cause gray hairs or cause wrinkles or cause whatever. We all have a lot of the similarities in our human experience. And so the first row really is a place that I see bringing those human experiences in, and putting them out there, kind of acting as a loudspeaker so that those stories can get out and go further and hopefully inspire people to make like life-sustaining changes that are going to really just shake up the world that they are involved in. So the world around them. That's really what first row is for.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that. I want to know when you started to, because for those, we're going to get into Incentivized Events a little bit later on. That's another business venture that you had. And actually, that was around the time we first met. But in crafting where you are today with First Row, what was a false truth that you were given early on in the journey to get to where you are today that maybe you had to deal with in order to construct where you are today?
I think the biggest false truth that I had to overcome, and it's still a challenge even today, is that my mistakes that I make in life, past and present, they don't define me, and that they don't make me any less inspirational. And I think that was the false truth that I had backwards. It was like, well, I've made all these mistakes. I haven't walked this golden brick road to, Oz. I actually have stumbled and I've fallen and I've strayed off the course and the path that was before me. And so those mistakes, those failures, kind of played a psychological game on me where I just really didn't feel worthy of attempting to inspire others to be great. Even though I felt like I had the potential and the energy and the charm and charisma to do great things, I just didn't feel, I guess, for lack of better terms, the shame of my mistakes made me want to hold back and really not put myself out there. Because when you do expose your light, you also expose where your shadows are.
I like that. Exposing your light, exposing where your shadows are. We in a conversation that you had with me on a show that we did a while back, that brings me very much to the mindset of there are no hypocrisies in evolution. getting to that space where it's okay to be flawed. Just because we're not perfect, that doesn't mean that we don't have something good to offer. So I can really, I can really dig that. So then, in the quest to create First Row, so we talked a little bit about some of the different things, that perfectionism, which is what I like to call that. Uh, what was it actually along the journey that you think led you from incentivized events to creating your own First Row? Because the concept, from the way you describe it, of the First Row had been there from some time. You got that idea, I remember you saying, or that concept, from your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad told you about that. So there's having that seed that's planted, and then there's going about your life, and there actually being a space where you say, hey, that's what this meant. And this is what I think I want to start to try to do with this information. Talk a little bit about that space and that shift for you.
Okay, so quick correction. It's somebody who was like a business mentor who's father-like, but not my biological father. Not to discredit him, but I don't want to not credit the person who taught me that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But the journey, it's almost like, and this is going to sound so cliche, but it's almost like the journey was predestined to transition from incentivized events into First Row. And the reason I say that is because from the very beginning of incentivized events, one of the struggles I had with the structure was that I was doing a lot of business, keynote speaking, inspirational speaking type events, which if you didn't work for the business, then you didn't get the content. And so it kind of isolated my inspiration. And I'm a big dreamer. So for me, I'm like, I want to make sure I'm impacting millions of people and inspiring millions of people. And it's not about a fame thing. It's about really trying to do my part to leave a legacy of growth behind. So because of every time it would be like I talked to somebody, whether it was a close friend, a business acquaintance or whatever, I'm like, yeah, I had this great speaking engagement. I did this, that, and the other. And they're like, man, I'd really like to see that. And I was like, yeah, well, you got to be an employee to see it. So it created a level of frustration that was like, gosh, I got to find a way to get this inspirational content out and get my story out. And then that led to getting the story of others out. So for me, it was more so about like removing that isolation. And so when I started thinking about the First Row, it really, I didn't know that it was happening, but it really started happening on Facebook with just like a daily, every day I was doing like a thought of the day and putting inspirational things up, and people were like, oh, where are you getting all these from? And I'm like, oh, my head. Like, I just take time to reflect in the morning and determine where I want my thoughts to go. And that's what I try to post up so I can hopefully inspire somebody else to either get their mind going about what their thoughts and their focus on their day is going to be. And so that's where it started on a small page called Things Many Fathers Forget to Teach Their Children. Very long name. In the future, I won't be making such long names. However, that's what that's what it started off as. It started off as that, and then I had what the true transition or the pivotal moment was. I had an experience, and the experience resonated with me for about a week, and I just wanted to share the experience because one of the big things, as you know, for me is fatherhood. Like, I don't even sometimes, even if you're not my kid, I don't, when I see a kid, it's like my mind goes to father mode. So I had this experience, and I'll be very brief about this story, but I had this experience where I was at the state fair with my son's mother and our baby boy. And this kid was with a single mother, and they were in this area where it's like there's a police station and then the information center. And something happened that drew my attention, like a water bottle went kind of like flying and scrubbing across the ground. And so I see this mom like yelling at her son, like, pick that up, pick that up. And she gets ready to take this shoe off to like hit him. And I'm thinking like, oh Lord, you about to go to jail if you hit that boy with this chancla. If you hit him with that, you go into jail because the cops is like right there. So I like walk over, I pick up the water bottle and I hand it back to the mother. And I asked the boy, I'm like, you know, what's so bad about your situation that you feel the need to throw this water bottle across the area that we're in. And so like I had a conversation with him. Long story short, his mother let me interject and speak into his life. I got asked by like the fair staff later, like, hey, so did you know that little boy? No, just met him. But I mean, where I grew up at and how I grew up, everybody who was an adult had the ability to be a parent. Had the ability to speak into your child's life as long as they weren't trying to hurt them. I mean, shoot, back then they was able to give me whoopings, but I wasn't going to whoop the little boy. It's not my child. So I had just like a heart to heart with him about, you know, what he is as a young Black man growing up, or a little Black boy growing into a young Black man, and like, you know, the types of attention in public that you really don't want to bring to yourself. And that like, you know, you're mad at your mom for whatever reason, but realize if your water bottle hit my 2-year-old son, your mother would be risking her life to keep me from getting to you. So like, that's what started it. And it like started resonating with me. And so I just was like, I'm just going to share this story on Facebook. And I shared it on my Facebook, happened to be on a Wednesday. And I think it was like maybe 2 more weeks went by, and I was like, you know, I think I'm going to start doing videos on Wednesdays. And that's what actually birthed the Wednesday word. And then from the Wednesday word, that's where the first row came into play at.
And what's funny is I remember that time period, because I remember when you started to do the regular posts of the videos, and I would catch them and I was sharing them, and I was like, okay, you know, you're going in deep. You're going in deep. But those of you watching who may not know, or well, you probably don't know, but I actually met Billy. I was in radio some time back, and Billy was one of, I believe you were the first guest on my show. And it's funny because ever since we got the opportunity, when I interviewed you way back then, and actually we had a couple other times after that where we had the opportunity to share some space on the radio together, we just kind of kept in touch after that. And then to kind of witness the growth I think that each of us have had during that time is something crazy. So I mean, to like be at this space with you and to have witnessed some of what was going on before you got to this point. Yeah, it's good stuff. So you mentioned a little bit earlier, you talked about the boy and manhood. And when you mentioned manhood, I said, yeah, let's go ahead and go there. So
okay, wait, time out. Before we go there, because we're gonna leave this question and I want to read this question in from the chat. One of the things is Damian Rose says, one thing that I always say is when you feel that great opportunities don't exist for you, catch them. And then Black Heights asked the question. He said, what do you think your purpose is in life? Whew. Y'all going, okay, I see how y'all want to play tonight. No problem.
Since we on the subject, since we all on Billy Wroe. And then, you know, get off my page, Black Heights.
Right.
Don't get off my page. But that's okay. Go ahead.
So let's see. What do I think my personal purpose is? Black Heights, fortunately, he and I have had many conversations, but one of the things for me that I'm really big on is legacy. I think my purpose is not so much tied to just my walk through this particular time in my life, but it's really tied to what I'm leaving behind, what I'm investing in my sons, what I'm investing in humanity overall in general. So my purpose really is to connect with people, whether they are broken, connect with people who are successful, to be this universal component that brings people together to really start identifying our similarities. And then also, I think that it is to really try to find the things that resonate within them that are going to inspire them into greatness. How do I go about doing that? First row is like the first step. Well, really, I don't know what step it is, maybe step 10, but it's a very long process that I see that it's going to take a lifetime of energy and intentional effort to accomplish. So my purpose overall is to inspire greatness in the world. And as lofty as that goal may seem, I'm just looking at doing it person by person, subscriber by subscriber, interaction by interaction.
Absolutely. So then personal growth, that's something that you had to be really connected to, invested in during this journey. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution for you, you know, just from what you would define the boyish stages of your life to actually becoming a man. Let's talk about that, because that came to mind when I was preparing for this show, because even with myself, when I think about where I've come and where I was to where I am now, tell us a little bit about what it was like to have this evolutionary space going on within yourself, your goal of what you want to try to do, and then the process of interconnecting with the woman in your life, having your family. What was that process like for you? How was manhood modeled for you?
So as a young boy, I actually spent a lot of time out of the house at friends' houses and running around playing basketball and riding bikes and all kinds of stuff. Just, I didn't spend a lot of time at home. I think the best word to define my childhood or childish mentality would be knucklehead. It's a very stubborn child, very combative, very they're stubborn, just stubborn. I was trying to be nice to myself, but really the answer is stubborn. And so because of that, I just always had this march to my own drum type mentality. I grew up in a household where my mother and father were both present until I was 16 years old. So I had a very good amount of time in which I grew up with my parents. They displayed some behaviors that were not good for me. They displayed some behaviors that were good for me. But from the manhood perspective, my father, he taught me a lot about 16 years old. So I had a very good amount of time in which is that you or me, Taralyn?
That's me.
They displayed some behaviors that were not good
and I can't get it off. Give me just 1 second.
No problem. I'm like,
there we go. You're like, who is that? There we go. My apologies.
That's all right. From my father's perspective, he taught me a lot about isolation, actually. He's a very independent, if you meet him, he's a very friendly person. People like him. He's likable, charming. However, as a kid, I remember him spending a lot of his time in the shed, and we had like a 32-inch tube TV. And I remember he would sit in the shed and watch this 3-inch TV, black and white with a little antenna on it. And so it was just I would wonder why he would do that. And I still haven't had the conversations with him to know whether he was just unhappy and wanted to stay outside, or if that was just where he found peace at. But I learned a lot about that isolation and became very comfortable with myself, almost to a fault in some of the relationships I went into, where it was like, hey, look, I'm not trying to be the center of your life. I'm willing to be like a sidecar to your motorcycle. So I was challenged with that in the relationships that I got into. You fast forward to interacting in school and stuff like that. I was a very smart young man. However, once I was bored with something, it was hard to keep me from being a distraction. So, I mean, in some classes, I was the class clown. In some classes, I was just, trying to shake off the mentality of being the nerd and, not really wanting to be picked on. Fortunately, I made some examples early in life on why we don't pick on Billy Wroe. So I didn't have to worry about that very much after junior high school was over. They was like, no, Billy will fight you, and it's going to be a fight. So just leave him alone. You can't have my lunch money, my milk money. You can't have anything without working for it. So that was the childhood. I grew up, went and really didn't know which direction I wanted to go. I knew school wasn't going to be immediately for me. I just was burned out with school from after high school. Was just done. It was like, I'm not really feeling this whole school thing, and I don't want to go and sit in another class next semester. So I just went right into the workplace and really just started figuring out what work ethic was, getting fired from jobs for not showing up on time, all kinds of things. And then I think what really brought a screeching halt to a lot of that was the birth of my oldest son. We conceived him at 21. He was born when I was 21, and then I turned 22. But I remember my older sister telling me, when I found out you were going to have a child, I was like, oh crap, my brother's not mature enough for a child. And she later on had that conversation again and was just like, but I watched you like flip. Like you went from, I can do whatever I want, la, 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 toys in the toy box, to I'm responsible for a life. And though I might make some more mistakes, I got to realize that those mistakes, I'm bringing this life through those mistakes. So like the mentality of me changed quite a bit. And then fast forward me using some of the tools that I witnessed with my parents that didn't work. I got into this marriage with my older son's mother that I was bringing some of those same tools into that marriage, and my marriage didn't work. And so then I ended up being a single father for a while with my older son, which further solidified the necessity of maturity and really being like, I can't look to this baby to provide the revenue that we need. And because I had lost a job, I was like, I can't make it on food stamps and cash aid for the rest of my life. Like $540 and $400 in food stamps is not going to be the life that I want to live. So I started really working to climb my way out of a hole that I actually put myself in. So I think, I mean, I don't want to go too far, but I think that should answer your question. I really, the manhood and getting into the manhood stage has been a very long journey. It has been a very tough journey at times that I've wanted to give up on. However, I'm grateful for today that I'm still here, still kicking, still pushing, not just for my sons, but for the people that I hopefully inspired through First Row.
Any bad habits that seem to reoccur because they're habit more than anything? Anything you still have to shake from time to time?
I think the worst habit would be the combativeness, because growing up in the household where there's, two parents who are arguing, yelling, fighting, all these different things, and they weren't doing it all the time, but they were doing it enough for me to see it, to think that that was healthy and normal. And so for me, going to a private school for kindergarten, learning to speak very properly. And I've always spoken this way, like throughout school, and having people like, why do you speak like that? Or why you talk like that? I'm like, well, this is how I speak, and not willing to change that. I've always been willing to go over the top when it comes to the combat. Like if it's, because he talks like a square, now I'm gonna, punk him or take the basketball or not let him play. And I remember my mother, she told me when I was young, before I went to elementary school, she was like, if anybody picks on you, you fight back. And I was like, all right. And then she told me later in life, like, that was the worst thing I could have ever told you. I took that, was like, I can fight? You don't know what you've done. So I used to get in fights all the time. Like one of the guys I used to fight quite frequently, his name was Michael Hamilton. And we would get in fights probably like every other week. We would get into a fight. And it was, I don't even know what it was about him, because he's a cool dude. I've ran into him as an adult, and we laugh about that stuff now, but it's like, I was a fighter, and it was like, you couldn't take anything from me if I was conscious enough to hold on to it. So I think that's one of the big things that I've taken with me into corporate America, is really trying to find, and I struggle with it, but trying to find that balance on being able to not just hear feedback, because I like feedback, even good or bad, I like feedback. But when I feel like people are disrespectful, I don't know if that's a hood trait that I just can't shake, or it's that combativeness in me that I can't shake. But either way, when I feel like you're being disrespectful, my brain goes into combat mode, and it says, well, now you're going to have to prove to me that you can beat me up. And that is not a healthy problem resolution stance to be in, because now instead of being peace driven or to be solution driven, now you're in defensive mode, and you're like, no, I'm in grenade driven. Like, I'm gonna throw a grenade and blow your whole side up. So that's what's been the habitual challenge that constantly, I think that'll rise up in me until I'm old and gray and probably not able to do nothing. I'll just be barking with some false teeth or something. You don't want to see me. There are a couple of other things that were in the chat. So there's a reason why, you guys, I'm doing the chat, because Taralyn, can you see the chat yet?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I'm gonna stop doing the chat. I'm gonna do this last chat thing, and then I will go ahead and let you decide when you bring in the chat.
All right. All right.
Somebody says, let's see. Black Height said, great answer, harmony. He also said, Taralyn, those are some cool frames that you got there. She said she felt, hey, y'all, she said she feels like royalty today. I just want y'all to know she got her royalty.
Gotta put that royalty purple out.
Yeah, that royalty purple and the spectacles on. Then agree, loving the frames. That's 1300 Carol. Agree, loving the frames. Think we get great insight and knowledge from First Row. But the biggest thing that is great, and this will be a legacy for his children and grandchildren, etc., well beyond. True. Legacy is very important to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So have you found it hard with, because I know how driven and passionate you are. We worked together on and off for a long time. Have you found it difficult to be able to balance your passion and what you want to do in terms of building your business and your brand with the women in your life? How do you balance that? How do you find a space for that?
I got to look at the big picture first. First Row is the big picture. And there's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things in there it says is, don't let what matters the most be at the mercy of what matters the least. And though, don't get me wrong, I'm single, but enjoy romantic connection. First Row is what matters the most. And so there's times where I struggle with the balance. But I think it's about being intentional. And one of the things that I do is I keep a very organized calendar on when I do things, how I do things. If it's Wednesday, I know the Wednesday word's coming. If it's Tuesday, I know it's an Intersation. I have things planned out for First Row all the way through the middle, actually starting now into the beginning of May. So I'm very intentional about the time that I have. So the balance has been really, after I have all these things done with First Row that I've already committed to, what time do I have left over? Is that time to talk on the phone? Is that time to go and get a bite to eat? Is that time to go back to California? All these different things come into play when it comes to that romantic connection. I did try, like when I first moved to Utah, I tried Tinder or Match or one of those online programs. And the fortunate thing is I wasn't overly involved in First Row. I was still just doing the Wednesday word. So that gave me time to like interact with a couple people and get to know people. And then I'm really selective and picky on the people that I interact with. So it's like, I'm not going to interact with somebody just because I don't want to be lonely. I enjoy my own company. I can pick up a book and be just fine. I could go to the gym and work out and be fine. So I'm okay with that. That's where I'm happy my father taught me that isolation, because I'm not running out and just settling for relationships. But one of the biggest things that will be like, it's a non-negotiable for me is that if I am in a relationship, that person has to understand that my vision is big and I need support on that vision. So I'm constantly like sending out information like, hey, what do you think of this graphic? Or what do you think of this title or this topic? I'm constantly sending that information out to not just people that I'm interested in, but to my network of people. It's like, hey, you just did this Intersation. I'm thinking this might be the graphic. What do you think about it? So I think the biggest thing for me is that the person needs to understand that my time is finite. I will still make time to spend time with that person. But their support, it might just be like, I might get done with a long week of First Row and a full-time job, and I just need like my head rubbed or my neck rubbed. And it's like, or a scoop of ice cream. I don't know. I'm an emotional eater. So it might just be something simple that I need, but I also look for somebody who's intuitive to be able to identify those needs and provide that type of support that I need as well.
Definitely. I think that's so key. It's nothing, I think, more gratifying than having a great, big, grand vision and having somebody who can support you in that and is excited for you and share that with you. So I definitely can feel that. I could feel that. Got to ask, what do you think to date your biggest failure has been?
my biggest failure has probably it's probably been not acting on all these feelings sooner. From a very young age, it was very clear to me that leadership was an area and a direction that I was going into. Like, I mean, like probably back to the second grade. I remember being in a talent show at one point. I don't know what grade I was in at this point, but I was in a talent show. And there was a little girl singing on stage, and we were like behind her, just kind of supporting and watching and listening. And I remember there were some kids in the front row who were really mean to this young lady, to the point where she stopped singing and she just ran off the stage crying. And I just stood up and just finished singing the song. Like, my brain was like, okay, I feel bad for her, but that music is still playing and somebody needs to carry this tune. So I remember singing the remainder of the song. And this was back when I was a soprano, because it was the greatest love of all. And I was,
what?
But now
he was doing the runs. You was running.
Them notes is a little harder now. Them notes is a little harder. I knew at a very young age leadership was in me, and instead of running towards it, even though I got placed in the countless programs that would inspire and push me into leadership, instead of running towards it, I was very hesitant. I was like, I don't want to be the leader. I remember even when I was like going to church as a kid, one of the parents would always be like, oh, I see you, pastor. I see you. And I'm like, I'm not a pastor. I'm still kind of lightweight a hooligan, and I don't want to be a pastor. So, but when I start thinking about like what I'm doing with the first row now, though it's not church, it still can have some spiritual elements to it. And
absolutely,
I think that maybe that is what she was seeing in me, that leadership, that willingness to say, okay, this does not exist within my network of people or my circles of influence. How can I create? And so that is probably my biggest failure, is just running from leadership and being hesitant to go into leadership because of the onus being on me. It was like, I'll just be in the background. I'll be a superstar in the background. But really the whole time I was trying to be a superstar in the background, I knew that that was not my calling.
Why? Why do you think you fell to the background and you felt like that wasn't your calling at the time? I mean, first of all, the type A personalities, like the group that you have contributors on the first row, those people, we can try as much as we want to not to occupy that space. But I know for me personally, because I can totally relate to what you're talking about, making the conscious choice to stand on the sideline, and then I'm upset because I'm on the sideline, because there's really some things that I want to do, and a way that I want to speak and be heard, and not so somebody could see me, because actually I'm the type that's completely and totally not a front man. Some people would never believe that, but I'm not. But at the end of the day, I was created to occupy that space and to share that space. And I know for myself some of the things that have, the fact that I made the conscious choice not to, there was a reason why. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that was for you?
So since we said transparency, I think it was,
don't go there.
I think being in the background allowed me to get away with things that if I was in the front, I wouldn't have been able to get away with. And some of those were unethical in the sense of not like illegal by any means, but just unethical in the sense of how to treat people, whether that was treating the people that I was dating or that I was married to. Other things were just like, I just sometimes want to be able to walk in a room and not allow my energy to like precede me. That is something now that, I mean, even at my current job, they call me the mayor in my department. They're like, oh, you're the mayor, because everybody in this building knows you. Like, we've been sitting in this corner for a couple of years now and nobody's been talking to us. And now you're here and it's like, everybody's talking to us. So I think that's what it was, is I just wanted to be able to be a knucklehead a little longer. And I knew the moment that I got into leadership and took on that role, that I was going to be responsible, just like I'm responsible for my sons. I was going to be responsible to guide the decisions that people make and be an integral part of their success. So I I think that's why I had that fear and that reluctance to step up, because it was like, shoot, I mean, I'm gonna cause some problems because I'm a very transparent person. I'm transparent intentionally though, because I don't want people to be able to use things against me. I don't believe in blackmail. So if you like, well, you better do X or I'm telling, I'm like, well, let's just go and tell together, and then I'm still not doing X. So I think that's what it was. Is I knew as a leader I was going to be very transparent. So a lot of the
Absolutely.
little sneaky stuff that I thought I was
We're
getting
gonna have no
away
wiggle
with.
room.
Yeah, I thought I was getting away with some things. That was my little
No wiggle room.
my chair salsa. I thought I was.
That whole lead by example thing.
Yeah.
I gotta go to the chat because Damian Rowe, he actually threw something in here. And no, we hadn't asked it yet, Damien. I was getting there, but I'm gonna let Damien ask it. He asked, so he wasn't sure if it was asked already, but what do you feel is your greatest accomplishment as a father, single or married?
I think in all categories, as a father, my greatest accomplishment is, I think, showing my children by example what it is to be a man, like what manhood is. Manhood is not this masculinity hard thing. It's this person. I mean, even my 16-year-old recited it back to me. He was like, you told me a man is the difference between a man and a boy is a boy doesn't do because he doesn't like to or doesn't feel like he wants to do something, but a man does in spite of how he feels. He does regardless of what he wants. And I think that I try to show my children that through my actions. Am I always right? No. There's times where probably I'm a little more strict than I need to be. There's times where I'm a little more structured and lecture driven than I need to be. But I do believe that my children see that I work hard. They see that I know my worth in the workplace. They see that I'm obviously, like, I think it's really, really cool that my kids can see that I'm on live on YouTube and the types and caliber of people that I know and interact with. And so I think that my greatest success as a father has been trying to set that example for my sons, even in the midst of my own shortcomings and failures. I'm going to go married and then single. As far as married, my greatest accomplishment, I would say, has been, even though I'm currently separated going through a divorce, my greatest accomplishment has been not allowing disdain for the person to set in and take hold. I'm a pretty grudge holding type person. So like when I'm not messing with you, I'm not messing with you. And like, you don't have to smile in my face. If we see each other in the same building, you don't have to say a single word. You don't, I mean, if I don't talk to you, I'm not going to make any exclusive attempts to talk to you. And so, and even in my current separation, there's challenges that we have, but we're very cordial and we're still team oriented. And I think that that's so critical for our children. When my son, my youngest son asks, or says, I wish we were a family again, that tears me apart inside. However, I know that if I go back to trying to be that family and force that square into that round hole, what's going to happen is it's going to create resentment on both sides. And I like the healthy nature that we're in now. So I would say my greatest accomplishment, even though it's ending in a divorce, it's not because of the person being a bad person. It's just the things that I need intellectually or physically and spiritually. Those things are not being met for my end. And so I can't legitimately meet those on her end. But we have been able to successfully, even under the attack of some other people who may not want it to be as successful, we have been able to successfully figure out this co-parent thing. And our communication is really good. So that's from the married perspective. And then the single perspective is, I think my greatest accomplishment now is just being able to be completely transparent with people. And I call it sifting and sorting through the bullshit.
Sift through the bullshit and get to the bottom line.
Yes. From the single perspective, like, I'm very transparent with people that I date and let them know where my headspace is at, what I'm doing, how I'm working, and that I care about them. But the relationship from a, like, let me be, your boyfriend and you be my girlfriend. Like, I'm not in this space right now where I'm seeking ownership of a relationship. I'm in this space right now where I'm seeking good company, somebody that I have a good vibe with, somebody who doesn't bring drama, and somebody who knows how to be mature and an adult about any situation that comes up. And I think that I have found that in many ways. As I continue to be single, I've found that in many ways where I'm not looking for like a piece from this person, a piece from that person, a piece from this person. I'm happy single by myself. However, the person that I'm looking for has to be a whole person, independent of me, and then we both bring the best out of each other. So I think those are my three greatest accomplishments, is having that transparency, which allows me to go into the leadership role and not have to be like, well, hopefully girl A ain't watching and girl B is watching, because I don't want her to say, hey, boo. And then they be like, who you calling boo? Now I got an argument. See, now I don't have to do any of that. So I think that transparency leads me into leadership in a manner where I'm not encumbered by distractions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would you say that have there been times where you let circumstances dictate your response?
There's been plenty of times where circumstances have dictated my response. And I think those circumstances have been some of my greatest lessons on not acting on emotion. People think that people assume in the situations that I've been in, since certain situations, that I am not an emotional person. Like, I don't panic. I become very concise on and focused on what is the solution, because we got to get out of this particular situation. So there have been times where I have been overly emotional and I have allowed my emotions to steer the ship. And I found that the emotions drive, they don't really care about staying straight on the road. And so I've learned to really spend a lot of time in reflection and try to place myself in as many hypothetical situations as I possibly can, in order to identify what would be the path out. And I think this really, the best example of this was when I was in my second marriage. My wife and I had an argument, and it led to me, like, I was like, I'm about to leave, like, I'm out, my emotional state, because I knew I was getting to this place where it was like, this is getting ready to be really bad. I need to leave. And so I was getting ready to leave, and she blocked the door. She was like, you're not going anywhere. Now, I'm like, at the time I was probably like 195 or 180. She was probably like 108 pounds. I'm thinking in my head, like, there's no way you're going to keep me in this house. Like, you're not heavy nor strong enough to keep me from leaving the house. But being in that emotional state where you're charged and you're angry, and the person that you love has become your adversary, now you're like, oh, that combative nature is coming up. And I just remember just like stopping and saying, there's like 5 other exits out of this house. I would just prefer to go through the door. And if you could move, I'd appreciate it. But I'm not above running to the bathroom, locking myself in, and jumping out the window. So what do we want? what do we want to do tonight? One of them is going to involve us having to put the screen back on the window. The door is the easiest route. And she was like, okay. And she moved. And I think for myself in a younger state of my life, based on being combative, like I grew up in a house with domestic violence. So the border that, or the boundary that a lot of people have when it's like, oh, a man should never hit a woman. Well, I watched my mom and my dad physically fight each other. So that boundary is not the same for me. So I have to be very intentional. Like, okay, a man shouldn't hit a woman. But at the same time, Billy thinks, if you hit me, I'm going to defend myself, and I'm equal opportunity. You hit me as a woman, I'm defending myself. You hit me as a man, I'm defending myself. Now I got to work on that, the reasonable force part. But I'm like, if I'm in a fight, I'm in a fight. I tell my kids all the time, like, I've never had a fight with a friend and they be like, well, I don't want to hear it if you just, if you didn't fight straight up. I'm like, look, you do whatever you got to do to win. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be the person knocked out, still getting punched in the face. So
exactly.
a fight is a fight. There is no rules. If there was rules, you'd be in a ring getting paid. And if you're not in a ring getting paid, then there are no rules. So
absolutely.
I think that's the biggest thing, is really learning how to make healthier decisions in the emotional states that we are inevitably going to fall in and out of.
I think it's good to hear a man talk about emotion. I always love to quote Talib Kweli, Love Languages. Women thrive on emotions men refuse to acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to have a conversation where you can hear a man talk about something that's so natural and normal for women that they try to act like doesn't exist. And that is, being sometimes driven by emotion. And if you're driven by emotion in regular relationships, then of course there are stages where that can impact you when it comes to building your business and brand and dealing with other people. I mean, you always, there's different levels to it, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but you're a person that's growing and going through things all while you're building your business. You're a person outside of that, So if you're having some of these challenges in your everyday life, then it would stand to reason that in some ways that could impact leadership, that could impact decision making. So it's just good to hear you talk about that from that perspective. I want to know, Brother Rowe, what inspires you? Who? What makes you, other than, the fact that you have your own internal mechanism that keeps you driven, but what external makes you like, yes, fuels you, keeps you going?
I think, and it's funny because I wrote this down way early in the beginning of the conversation based on a question Damien had asked. The biggest driver for me is the return on compassion. Really just trying to understand people and understand that we all come from different types of beat up backgrounds. I mean, even if you have like the greatest parents in the world, there's still going to be things that you go through in life that kind of rough you up a little bit. So I think that is what really drives me. Is it's almost like when my youngest, or my oldest son, um, he was in an Easter egg hunt, and I think I had picked him up from kindergarten that week or something. And he was talking, or preschool. He was talking to me in the back seat, telling me about his day and stuff. And he's like, "Dad, guess what? Today I learned that it doesn't matter whether you win or lose." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah."
Well,
So, son, I get what your teacher is trying to tell you and teach you. However, nobody starts anything with the intent to lose. Nobody. We don't start races with the intent to come in last place. We start races with the intent to come in first place. Now we may come in last place and we have to not be a poor sport, and if we come in first place, we don't want to be a poor sport there either, but the goal is first place. So
yep, all the time.
within that week, he was doing an Easter egg hunt, and they were getting ready to start the kids off, and they're like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "What did Dad say about winning, Z?" He's like, "I want to win!" Like, just seeing that, like, it unlocked this competitor spirit within my son. Like, having that conversation with him as a father, and trying to pour that lesson into him and seeing it unlock in him, like, that's that compassion that I'm talking about, where you might be talking to a coworker and they're just going through a lot, and you're that ear to hear and give them a little bit of feedback that really makes a big difference in their life. Like, I've literally talked to people who were on the verge of committing suicide, and I'm not a crisis. My job and profession is not crisis hotline, suicide prevention. But I've talked to people who have been on the edge, ready to jump, ready to quit, ready to give up. And I myself have been on the edge, ready to jump, ready to quit, ready to give up. And so having that moment of compassion to hear them and just let them know that there's something beyond this. And I don't mean life after death beyond this. I mean, there's something beyond today. There's something beyond this conversation. And if you're not here, the contributions that you're supposed to give, they're going to be lacking. The people that you were supposed to influence or change may not get the changes that they need if you check out and you take the shortcut. So I think that's the biggest thing for me that inspires me, is the result of being compassionate to people and seeing how that resonates with them. And then they actually start trusting you with bigger and greater things.
Absolutely. I could feel that. So now that we've gotten, a little bit of a glimpse into the journey of Rowe, now let's get back to the first row. and talk about from where you sit today. We touched a little bit on incentivized events and a little bit just because we didn't talk about the differences between that business and this business and kind of like the shift. I think that's important because I think from what I know of you, it talks a lot about the transition of a space that you were in, I think emotionally, mentally, everywhere into where you are now. It's like you're
Mhm.
kind of like a different person in a way to me from then to now. So talk about the difference between the two of those, a little bit about incentivized events, and then we'll get into the future of First Row.
So, Incentivized Events was initially a platform that started based on an inspirational speaking opportunity that I had in Southern California with a designer jeans firm. Um, I knew that I wanted to do more speaking engagements. And I knew I also did not want to just be giving my social security number out to everybody.
That
So
part.
I had to create an entity in order to bill for my services. Um, the incentivized events portion, I think it came at a very interesting time when I myself was like kind of just starting to come out of that cocoon of, okay, let's really focus on what you know you're capable of doing, which is
Mm-hmm.
inspiring and leading people. Um, and it was interesting because I was working in a profession, like a job, that I had a boss that he was antiquated as far as like he didn't support me being inspirational, but then in some ways he was jealous of me being inspirational. I don't know. It was very weird. Um,
Yes,
but it
you
pushed me
needed to coach
harder.
him.
No, that there's a saying in coaching that you coach the willing. I don't think he'd be
Exactly.
willing, so no, there won't be any coaching. Not from me for him. Maybe he'll find his coach, but I'm definitely not it because I still got animosity, and I told you in the beginning I hold grudges. So, but first, or not first, incentivized events, it brought me quite a few opportunities to speak. And in those opportunities, I found myself very structured, very business, very like, this is the business, these are the contracts, this is the proposal. Those things were like cranking out of me. However, I then started taking on one-on-one coaching clients. And in the one-on-one coaching clients, I really felt um, fulfilled. I mean, I felt fulfilled by the speaking engagements that I was doing with incentivized events, but I felt fulfilled in a different way from the one-on-one coaching. However,
Uh-huh.
one-on-one coaching was not very effective as far as if you want to impact millions of people one at a time. That's a long time to get to your first million people, and I don't know if you'll be here to get to the next. So it just wasn't a very efficient manner to interact. And there's certain things I did within incentivized events. I started a mastermind group and had people interacting from that perspective. And a lot of the things that I was doing towards the latter part of incentivized events really act as the catalyst for the beginning portion of First Row, where
Uh-huh.
I started a mastermind. Actually, there's a person in here, Bruce Gatewood. He was a part of that mastermind, where the overall goal of the mastermind group was to get people on one accord to where we could go into the community and field questions from people and know that the panel in the community was strong enough to answer those questions and provide solutions, and not be so combative of trying to make somebody look less than them or elevate themselves. And so
Uh-huh.
now I see that when I do First Row Intersation panels, that community, that camaraderie, but it's on a much greater level and it's very diverse.
Yeah.
So getting a much more diverse mix of solutions. So I think that's where the transition really started taking place in the latter part. And then once I left California, all the work that I was doing with incentivized events had to come to an end because most of my
Right.
work was out there. So now I'm in Utah, and it's like, so how do you connect back to the people, not just in California, but how do you keep from being limited by your physical location? And that's where YouTube started coming in with the First Row, and really intentionally moving off of Facebook, a platform that not everybody has access to, and onto YouTube, a place where, I mean, anybody can get on YouTube from anywhere in the world. I think in one of my Intersations last week or the week before, there were one of my cousins who's in the chat, Brian. He was in the airport watching the Intersation. So it meets people where they're at versus me physically having to have them come and meet me where I'm at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now on to infinity, right? So what makes you nervous about actually scaling an expansion for First Row? When you think your biggest thought is like, oh my God, when I get there, like, or maybe tackling a certain thing, whatever that thing may be, to get you to that next big space. What makes you nervous?
I think the biggest thing that makes me nervous is making sure, regardless of how big or small First Row is that it is able to survive and thrive without me. You can't say that you are looking to set up something that is a legacy. If it begins and ends with you, that's not a legacy. You're just leaving behind a memoir.
Absolutely.
So I think my biggest challenge, I don't want to even call it a fear. My biggest challenge to mentally overcome is what does the torch look like when it's handed off? How do you surround it and create it, regardless of how large it becomes, to where it's a plug and play for the right leader / inspirational person. Whether that's my children, whether that's somebody else's children, I'm kind of indifferent. I mean, I guess I would like to see my children, if it's their last name as well, I would like to see them take interest and move forward with it. But at the same time, as a business person, I want the most qualified and most likely person to continue the legacy, to take the reins well after I'm done.
Absolutely. I could feel that. Have you found balance?
Balance in what?
Just overall, in all of the things that you're juggling right now in life. I know that we talked a lot about different spaces in life where things would be good over here and it's just a train wreck over there, and just a lot of different things going on and kind of scattered about. With everything that you have going on, and of course, we're not talking about anything being perfect, do you think you found a space of balance in how you deal with and manage it all?
I would be lying if I said I found balance, but I would be truthful if I said I have found effective compartmentalization.
There we go.
Yeah, the compartmentalization is definitely necessary. Like when I'm at my professional job, my 9 to 5, I have to compartmentalize. I can't be focused on First Row like I want to be. When I'm doing things for First Row, I can't be focused on things for my job. When I'm spending time with a person, I need to be spending time with that person and not like, oh yeah, well, I'm spending time with you, but the whole time we're spending together, I'm creating graphics and doing things. Like there's times where I may have to like multitask and do those two things, but for the most part, I think, like I said, I have found compartmentalization. The only area I struggle in that is with sleep.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get a lot, sometimes I don't get a lot. And then sometimes the solution that I am working on for the moment is so overwhelming, and I'm so absorbed and wrapped up into it that I literally will go to sleep and I will just dream on repeat, trying to figure out the solution to things. And it's annoying because I did a video a couple years ago on lucid dreaming. I'm a lucid dreamer. So I'm very aware that I'm dreaming. So I can like, hey, no, get that out of the way. I want to focus on this. And so it doesn't give my brain the time that it probably needs to rest. But I'm working to surround myself with a great team, other content providers such as yourself, Key, Moses. Those are the people that I'm surrounding myself with, and hopefully in the future, additional content providers in order to help carry the overall proverbial torch.
Absolutely. You know, time flies when you're having fun. We're actually over the hour, 4 minutes. So
Now
we're
you
going to
know
get into,
how it goes.
yeah, you know, I know how it feels. You know, dealing with you, in radio, boom, an hour flat. Dealing with you, I'm 4 minutes over.
Mm.
All right. So we're going to start wrapping it up. But I want to know, on our way out of here, if you were to imagine 5 years from now, the pinnacle of where First Row is, the pinnacle of where you are as a man, your personal growth, even in your life. If you can imagine that being the biggest and grandest thing, I mean, step into those shoes, that life that he's living, the way in which he's contributing, the different people that he's brought in, the places that he's going to be heard, all of that, just live, smell, feel the life. What does that look like 5 years from now to you? Who is that guy and the ways that you have grown?
From if I was to make it the simplest, I see First Row being family. And I use that because I grew up in a time where kids still played in the neighborhood. And I didn't play with my parents a whole lot. But
Mm-hmm.
all those people in my neighborhood that I grew up with, the Linda Chawns, Courtney Dostey, Moses Jenkins, Tim Rushing, all those people, Adelina, like I can go down a list of people from like first grade that I still know today. Those people are my family. And I don't doubt that there's not a person or one of them that I can call and say I'm in need, to say I just need to speak to somebody, to ask how they're doing, and I wouldn't be welcomed with the love of a family, like the love of a family member. So when I think overall, at the end of the day, what I want people to feel like who are a part of the First Row, whether they're a content producer, a subscriber, somebody who stops in on occasion, I want them to feel like when they touch down on First Row, they feel like they're a part of a family, because some of us come from broken families. Some of us feel like, again, we don't have anybody who's going through what we're going through. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're in the safety of a healthy family, that is where you can open up and share some of those pains and some of those struggles and get people to pour love and life and solutions into your life. So I think overall it would be family. If I was thinking from the business standpoint, I would love to have like annual, if not quarterly, conferences for the First Row, where not just the viewers can come in and see the things or meet each other, but also from the perspective of corporate development, professional development, just master classes and things along those lines. Those are also other things that I would love to see before 5 years, but within 5 years, I think that should really be buzzing. And then the last thing, because I am an avid reader and an avid writer, I would like to see some First Row publishing and have some bestsellers coming out of the First Row brand. Bestsellers on self-development, but also bestsellers on just personal stories of triumph and inspiration. So that I think those would be the areas I'd like to see: family, conferences, and publishing.
Absolutely. What about the man? Where do you see yourself if you were in that space of exactly where you wanted to be in 5 years? What are some of the changes that you would like to see in yourself? Where do you think he would be to make all that happen?
So I struggle with that because I really love the work that I do professionally right now. And there's a lot of things that I'm doing intentionally to grow in that space. And so I can't say wholeheartedly that I just want to like leave. Like I'm not saying, oh, I want to leave my job and I just can't wait to be out of there. Now, had you asked me that in 2017, leave my job would have been like the number one thing.
Thing on the list.
Yeah, but now that I'm in a space where it's healthy, supported, I'm not disrespected, and I'm appreciated. I really want to contribute as much as I can to that team, and I really feel like the man that I will become will be a benefit not only to the First Row but to the organization in which I work currently. I think overall, I want to be a person as the man, The best way I could describe it is I told my older son one time is that the secret desire of men is that one day the youth will come to them as the wise elders of the village.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
so from in 5 years from now, I want to be well into my transition of coming and being that wise elder who can pour that wisdom and pour those parables, so to speak, into the young men, like into young ladies. But I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm not sexist. I just really focus on manhood. And so I believe the women are
Relate.
well more capable than I will ever be to pour into womanhood. I can pour some aspects into it, but my focus is on manhood. So I want the young men to be able to hear me and respect the wisdom that hopefully by then I will have obtained, because it's a continual journey.
Absolutely. Final question for you. So if you're looking at that guy in all of those areas 5 years from now, the gap in between where you sit today and 5 years from now, the middle, what advice would that guy 5 years from now, sitting in those accomplishments and that success as you defined it, what advice would he give Billy Wroe today?
Whew. Got to go to the future to come back to the past. I think the advice he would give me, because I'm so driven, is to not sacrifice the wrong things. Um, whether that's relationships, whether that's sleep, whether that's business. I think that would be the advice he would give: is make sure that your journey is a journey of growth and not a journey of regret. Um, I think that would be the advice. I mean, in my life, I have plenty of things that I regret and wish that I would have done differently. I've still been able to learn the lesson that I learned from them. Um, but really, at this point in my life, I'm not trying to live a perfect life, but I'm trying to be aware of the traps that are in front of me and not step into those traps to the best of my ability. Again, I think his advice to me would be, don't sacrifice the wrong things. Make the things that are the most important to you. Uh, Make sure that they understand that they're the most important to you, not just in words, but in actions as well. I think that would be what I would tell myself from the future.
Feel that. I can feel that. Well, friend, thank you.
No,
Thank
no.
you, thank you, thank you for being so open and so transparent. And it was a good time. Brings back old memories. We didn't get to talk on this level, but brings back good memories. And I want to thank everybody who took the time out of their evening to take and sit on the first row with us for this special edition of Intersations. Just a sneak peek you got tonight of what Behind the Grind is going to be like. So if you want to see more, stay tuned. If you haven't liked the channel, please like the channel. And if you have, what do you say? If you like it, share it. And if you
Oh,
share it, like it.
yes.
That part, yeah, do that because you definitely want to be informed for when the episodes of Behind the Grind start to air. And also, if you have any questions, comments, or somebody who you think would like to share what's going on behind their grind, it's easy to get at me. Just go to coach.taralyn at firstrow.com, coach.taralyn at firstrow.com, and I'll be glad to hear from you. So until next time, I guess we out, Ro. We out.
All right. Oh well, wait. Time out. I forgot.
What, what,
I
what,
got
what?
a couple other
Oh,
announcements.
uh-oh.
The next time we'll be live is tomorrow, um, 6:30 p.m.
That
Pacific
part.
Standard Time. That's the Wednesday word. That will be on Stop Worrying About Likes. Ooh, just talking about likes. Now stop worrying about them. But definitely tune in for that live. Also, don't forget there is still the special going on for the pre-order of Modern Day Mentor. If you're interested in a pre-order form, please go ahead and send an email to moderndaymentor@firstrow.com. Also, you can follow us on social media on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. All you have to do is type in those web addresses /firstrow.com. That's one STWROE. And then last but not least, I want to give a very special shout out to Jennifer Chambers, being the first angel investor in First Row. it's one thing to have a vision to inspire people. It's another thing for the people who know you intimately to believe and grasp and run with that vision with you, and to pour financial support into that vision. So I just want to give her a very special thank you for being the first angel investor in First Row. Hopefully there's many more to come, because I'm not going to lie, First Row behind the grind is expensive. So that's definitely one of the things I want to should send some love and a shout out for. But other than that, like Taralyn said, if you like it, share it. If you share it, like it. Thank you guys for rocking with us in the chat tonight. Happy to engage with you for the first week in the comment section. If you want to leave a comment and you're watching on the replay, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. But until the next time we see you on the First Row, one love, peace, and God bless.